What up, everyone? Back for another video. This time around we're going to do some more collecting advice. One of the most commonly asked things I've been asked on my channel since it started was, how do you clean? How do you dust? How do you do it? And, I've answered people in the comments, but people have been saying they wanted a video of that, and I could just do a video on how I dust, but I thought I'd turn it into more of an advice thing, like to give people tips on how to clean your collection, things to look out for, things to watch out for. So I'm just going to do another short little collecting advice video. So I'll give you some tips on how to clean your collection, how to care for it, and yeah, pretty much it. So starting off, I say clean collection and dust collection. I'll use those interchangeably because it's pretty much the same thing. You don't really ever need to clean your collection. By clean, people mean dusting, because that's usually the only thing you really have to worry about. For the most part, you don't have to worry about dirt or anything like that. And the number one tip I can give people is to avoid dust. And I know that sounds really weird, but there are things you can do to where you don't have to dust that often. And that's usually the number one answer I give people, is that they usually ask how often you dust, and I say, honestly, at the most, maybe like once a year, if even that, because I usually just prevent dust. And something about me, which relates to this, I'm horribly claustrophobic. I have a terrible claustrophobia. So anywhere I am, I always have moving air. Like right now, I have a fan right here. You can probably hear it through the microphone. And usually I have ceiling fans going. Just now before I started the video, I had my air conditioner going. There's always moving air going around. And that honestly keeps the dust from settling. But it doesn't make it go away. So a combination of air conditioners, fans, and also air purifiers. So if you have those things, you actually would have to dust a lot less often. When you have a ceiling fan, it's constantly keeping things moving, and the dust doesn't ever settle until you turn it off. And since I'm so claustrophobic, I have mine going pretty much all the time, even if it's just a little fan. So if you don't ever give the dust the chance to settle, you don't have to wipe it up as much. And when you have something like an air purifier, that circulates the air and it takes all the dust out. It purifies the air. It filters out all the dust so you don't have to dust anymore. And here comes Woof. He's going to be super distracting in the background. Thanks, Woof. Good buddy. So a combination of those things will keep it so you won't have to dust that often. That's what I usually do here. I really don't dust that often because it's, like I said, I'm constantly keeping things moving, so I really don't ever have to. It rarely ever settles because I have these things running constantly. One thing to avoid is humidifiers. Now, I know people need humidifiers. They have them for a reason, but as far as cleaning and dusting purposes are concerned, that's not the best idea. Quit it! Because it adds moisture into the air. And when dust and moisture combine, then you have a problem. Because once the dust gets moist, then it becomes like a paste, and then it becomes something where you do have to clean it and not just dust it. That becomes a real issue. And that's something where if it cakes on like that, that can actually damage your item. So I know people use humidifiers, but be careful using them in the same room. Oh my god. Stop. Stop it. Quit it. Stop. Be careful using humidifiers in the same room you have your collection, because when those two combine, it can create a real problem. What? Stop. Bad time to record this video. So, avoid humidifiers if you can. Next, make things easier on yourself. Just like avoiding dusting, make things easy to dust. And what I mean by that is have things closed. Like you'll see all my collection, all of them are in pop protectors, even the bigger cases. And you can't see off to the side here, I have big glass cases for a lot of my collection. And that makes it easy. When you don't have things out in the open, you don't have to dust each individual thing. When I have these sealed in a glass case, I don't have to go in there and dust stuff because dust isn't getting in there. Same with the pop protectors. I know it seems redundant because they're both that square shape, but the cardboard is a lot harder to dust and could get damaged very easily. Especially on those 6-inch and 10-inch pops, that cardboard is very easily damaged, especially by dust and moisture. So when you have it in a protector, it's very easy to just aggressively wipe it off if there's anything on there. That makes it simple. Same with these glass cases. Like I wipe off the glass on the outside, but I don't really ever have to go in there and wipe off the individual things. So keep that in mind when you're displaying things. Try to make it easy on yourself by either keeping things in the box or putting them in protectors. I also have some like plush figures that are back here behind this. Same thing. I used one of those long pop protectors and just lined them up in there because that made it easy to display. It keeps them together. It keeps them from falling down. That just makes it easy. It makes it easy to display, makes it easy to clean. So things like that, think ahead and think of ways that you can make it easy on yourself so you're not constantly have to use a lint roller on a plush or individual figures and things like that. Now, on to the actual dusting. So there's the obvious answers, and number one is just a dust cloth. That's on the easy stuff. Those are easy on boxes, on pictures, anything that is a big flat surface, tables, big shelves, anything like that. That's the obvious answer because you really can't damage those types of things. So those are things that you would use, and that's the obvious answer for that. But I would avoid, again, anything that has any moisture. So wet wipes and things like that, again, are fine on tables and furniture, but when you're getting into collectibles, you have to be careful. As I said with pop protectors, that's no problem to have some moisture on there, but when you're getting into things that have big surfaces like statues and stuff, you have to be careful about things like wet wipes because they don't always get in all the crevices, and often what can happen is when you're wiping dust, you'll often use a wet wipe and you'll wipe dust straight into those crevices and not be able to get in there because they're too small. Then you got the dust and the moisture. It'll dry and make this kind of paste or a crust, and then it's almost impossible to get out. So I would try to avoid wet wipes if possible. If it's the only choice you have, sure, but try to avoid it at all costs because you're always going to be running into that problem. Now, what to do for those statues and figures and stuff that aren't in the box. Like I have all these collectibles on the wall here. People ask about that stuff. And your best choice there is compressed air. You can get this at pretty much any electronics store. They use them to clean in keyboards way back in the day when you had like big keys. That's how you would clean in between your keyboards. It's basically just air. That's a little gun and you press it, a little burst of air and it shoots it out. But very importantly, not just compressed air. Most people will tell you compressed air, but if you have to have a way to get rid of the dust. Most people will use the compressed air and get it off that thing, but then it just goes into the air, and then once you leave, it just comes right back down. It completely defeats the purpose. So what you're going to need if you don't have an air purifier, but even if you do, is a handheld vacuum. You can even use like those big stand-up vacuums. They usually have an attachment that's a hose. You're going to need that at the same time. You're going to compress, blow the air, or blow the dust up into the air, and you're going to immediately try to suck up as much as you can. Obviously, it's not a perfect system, but you're just going to have to do your best to try to get what you kick up into the air, because if you don't, it'll come right back down, and it'll be a complete waste of time. So that's what I would recommend for statues like these back here, like the Egyptian gods and stuff like that. They're pretty decently sized, but they have a lot of crevices and stuff like that. As long as I don't ever get them wet, I should never have to worry about wiping them off. Compressed air should do just fine. But if I were to use a wet wipe on them, then that becomes a problem, and then compressed air won't work. In that case, if you do run into that situation where you have gotten something wet, then you're going to need a Q-tip. That's your best situation there. And depending on what the material is, you can use some kind of solvent to loosen it up, but that's a very tricky situation because it depends on what it's made of. There's so many different variations in there. I would avoid that at all costs if you can, but a Q-tip is easy to get in there and just kind of twist around and scrub around, and it'll take a long time. Don't think it's going to be an easy situation, but a Q-tip's your best bet there. And as far as like really small items, like my tiny ones on the shelf there, you can still use compressed air, but the problem with that is sometimes it's powerful enough to knock some of those smaller ones off the shelf. In those cases, I would personally take them off the shelf and give them a wipe down with one of those soft cloths or something like that. Again, without any moisture or anything like that. You can use the compressed air, but when you have things that are in cubbies like that, it's hard to get the dust out, so it doesn't always work as well as you might hope. So in those situations, I'll take them off the shelf and dust them. And I move things around enough in here to where I don't really have to go out of my way to dust. Like when it's time to reorganize things or sell something or get something new, something will come off the shelf and I'll notice it's dusty, so I'll do that and I'll dust the spot where it was. So it kind of goes through that whole thing. So I'll take things off the shelf, rub them all down individually really quickly, and then just wipe off those shelves, and that's usually how it's done. But like I said, if you follow the original steps about avoiding dust, you really shouldn't have to worry about it too much. So that's pretty much it. Those are the things I do to keep my collection clean. So avoid moisture, try to keep air circulating, air purifier if you can, compressed air is always good. If not, those cheap claws or those dusting, I don't even know what they're called, those poofy things, the Swiffer things. I'm sure there's a technical name for them, but those are your best friend. Just always have a few of those on hand. Use paw protectors. It's pretty obvious stuff, and I should have stated at the beginning, most of my collecting advice is for beginners. It's not for experienced people because they probably already know this stuff. But again, let me know what you think about that. Is there anything I missed? Are there any tips that you have out there that might help the viewers? Once again, I say it every time, thank you to the people that do weigh in. There are always some things I miss in the heat of the moment because these things aren't scripted. I kind of just jump on here and start rambling off the top of my head. So there's almost always something I miss. So if there is, please feel free to sound off in the comments because these videos are supposed to be helpful to everyone. So if you have more tips, put them down in there and let's just try to help out as much as possible. Other than that, see you on the next video. Thank you for watching and supporting. Love you all. Peace.